Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl as well as the latest episode of The Walking Dead. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Supergirl, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of The Walking Dead. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Supergirl. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. First and foremost, we have Manchester breaking out of prison along with his buddy Hat, which is interesting because John ends up pointing out later on, he's like, oh, that's fifth dimensional energy he's using because he's able to like pull stuff out of his hat and stuff like that. So I'm curious because obviously we haven't had fifth dimensional since season 2 because of Mr. Mixoplex situation. And it's so interesting too with his situation because it's like, well, because it seems like his powers are just like, oh, I have magical powers. And that's an interesting thing because it's hard to say whether like Hat himself is like a fifth dimensional or whether he just has access to fifth dimensional powers. Like, does his hat connect to the fifth dimension or calls upon fifth dimensional energy just because that's what the hat does? Or is it like fifth dimensional technology? Because in certain comic books, because I made a video a while back where I talked about Mr. Mixoplex, then some continuity, it's not like they use actual magic. It's actually fifth dimensional technology. So I'm wondering, is that what that hat is? That is technically like fifth dimensional technology. I'm not sure. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe it's just straight up powers. So maybe the hat is more in line with powers, or I wonder, could he do that with any hat, or is it just that hat specifically? Like I said, I guess it depends on whether it's tied to powers or technology. Either way, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Plus, he's joined up with a Morai and Menagerie, like that snake in her neck is going back full, so that's interesting. Got his own squad, of the elite, so that's kind of interesting. They're going down the more vigilante route. I even love he tried to make a deal with Kara. It's like, hey, you go, we'll stay out of your way when it comes to whole saving kittens out of, trees and stopping bank robberies, but when it comes to the racist and the, children of liberty, you let us handle that. But obviously Supergirl doesn't want to do that. That whole situation gets even more complicated when she finds out that the president has this whole secret thing he's working on called Claymore. Basically, it's satellites meant to shoot down any alien ship that enters Earth's atmosphere. And so Kara's kind of torn because she even she actually goes to Alex, which is so interesting because even Alex is like, whoa, what you doing showing up my place? I'm sure she's had maybe she's had memories of Supergirl showing up at her place before, but because she wasn't like whoa. I mean, it seems like it was kind of potentially like a first time deal. I mean, it makes you wonder like how much of like Alex's connected memories going, like, does she have memories of Supergirl kind of showing up and not really knowing 100% why Supergirl would turn to her besides just being a DEO agent, or in this case the director of the DEO. But nevertheless, what's really interesting though is that Kara was split because she's like, if I destroy this satellite, that just means I'm working with the elite. I kind of side with them. But then if I don't do anything, then that means I'm kind of siding with the children of liberty. It kind of left her torn. And in the end, she ended up destroying the satellite. I also love the fact they said she wore herself. I was like, yes, because we haven't seen that since she was, infected with kryptonite and everything, because it was in the atmosphere and all that. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm so glad they brought it back. I hope we get to see it more because, like I said, it only popped up at the beginning of the season. So it kind of got her own, it's a weird comparison to make. I won't make the comparison because it would have been making a Marvel comparison, and I'm just not going to go down. I was going to say, getting her Iron Man thing going on, but nevertheless. But, I did like kind of that dilemma, like that it kind of puts her in. Because even, it's interesting because there's another dilemma that popped up in this episode that was kind of interesting because she's torn between her as Kara. It's like, oh man, get drinks with Alex and stuff like that. But Supergirl's supposed to be training Nia. So obviously Nia knows everything about her being Kara and Supergirl, obviously. But it's still obviously Alex doesn't. So it's kind of like, oh man, the two different sides of my life kind of tugging at each other in that one moment. Wasn't a big deal necessarily, but it's still kind of that moment where we go oh, that's interesting to see that kind of pop up because Kara hasn't really had to worry about that in a very long time. She had to worry about it a little bit with Kat, and then home dude from season 2, I want to say, the dude she worked under in season 2. I'm blanking on his name now. She became a reporter underneath him, or was that season 3? I don't remember. is it Snapper? Was that his name? I'm blanking, dude. I'm terrible. But the fact is, like, she hasn't really had to worry about that. I mean, especially because Jimmy knows what she's up to, who she is, and everything. So it's like, yo, go do the Supergirl thing. I got your back. You know, so it's just kind of interesting. They kind of have to see that pop up in such a long time, and now it's kind of back into plot in that certain regard. But nevertheless, maybe I never caught the opening before. Maybe I just, like, glazed past it, but there's that whole aspect of like, I'm keeping a secret from everyone, including my sister, who works for the DEO. I was like, did they just recently change that, or was that changed before? Like I said, maybe that's just something, because they always slightly change the openings in certain regards, amongst the shows. So I just feel like maybe I just never caught that before. I don't know. Either way, it was kind of interesting because I think Alex probably doesn't realize it, but I think probably on some level her memories of her and Kara being sisters and stuff like that probably prompted her to be like, no, I followed what I believed in and went to back you up when it came to this whole situation. Or that could just be Alex's just who, I guess that could be also the argument of like, even without knowing who Kara really is, that Supergirl is really Kara, she still backed her up because it's like, I know what you're doing, I know what you represent, I know what you're fighting for, so you follow what you believe in and I follow what I believe in too. So it kind of shows you the foundation, like even though things are kind of mixed up a little bit, just because a lot of her foundation is going because she no longer knows that Kara is Supergirl, but it shows you what kind of person she is because she didn't agree with the satellite and stuff like that. So a lot of fundamentals of who Alex is still there, even without the foundation of like having an alien in her life to kind of give her that personal angle to it. I mean, to be fair, like there's still people in her life that are aliens, like Brainy. So it's still there regardless. It's just kind of interesting. It was also another interesting thing that came up about this too, was the whole like fact is that Manchester and John, because this whole thing was about testing John too, because John wants to keep down the path of peace, but for him it's like, there's that part of me that was a manhunter. That's what I'm good at. Like every fiber of my being is screaming for me to choose that path, but he wants to honor his father too, so he doesn't, like he ends up losing his cool later on and he's fighting Manchester and beating the crap out of him, but he's like, you have a death wish, and it's like, I think he's like, that's why you came to me. That Manchester is trying to do all this, but for him it's like, I'm not going to stop until someone puts me down. And I guess on some level he wants it to be John, because I think he feels like if it's John, if he can get John to completely cross that line, then maybe John will kind of be swept up in it. I think on some level Manchester is like, he's got this mission in his head and everything, but I think legitimately there is a part of him that does just simply want to die, to just be reunited with Fiona. He's on this mission to try and do some good before he's taken out, because that's what I'm thinking, because he's carrying around all this pain, this hurt, and this anger. He's doing this. He's trying to do good with it, but he's kind of going about it like the wrong way, killing people like that. Because, for Kara, it's like, that's not the answer, because it doesn't, because it's like hate just begets more hate. You responding in this manner won't be the solution to all of this. All they'll do is just create more problems later on down the road. It's just an interesting and complicated dilemma. I feel like they kind of all find themselves in, and especially John, like I said, trying to walk those two different paths. So it's like, what path will he choose in the end? I think probably maybe a path kind of representing both sides. I mean, it seems like, well, you can't do that, walk the path of peace and the warrior, or can you? And I think that's going to be something John will have to discover over the course of the season. But I think you can. You just have to, I don't know, make the argument could be, you have to make peace with the path of the warrior while also sheathing your blade when the time comes to walk the path of peace. I don't know. Like I said, I think you have to find a balance. You can't just choose one or the other, especially in John's case. Or maybe John will 100% choose one path. I have no idea. It's also sucky that Brainy ended up losing his Legion ring. That was kind of like, oh, wait, what? Even the fact is that, Manchester was using it to fly and everything like that, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, that's not, well, because I forget, like, the Legion rings don't necessarily work the same way in this canon as they typically, I think, would, where you can just time travel by yourself. It's like, no, you need a ship to time travel, because but there's other abilities and stuff within the Legion rings that we probably haven't tackled yet, but because I'm actually blanking on like whether or not, because I said that, but it's like I don't think the rings by themselves can time travel, because I'm like, last thing you want is that to be in Manchester's hands. But the fact of the matter is that kind of gives him a little step up amongst all of this, with the abilities and stuff like that, because he was the only human amongst the group. So, But we have seen too that this episode showed us that Manchester is willing to cut down anyone in his path, because it's like, oh, those guards on his way out, he seemed like he was going like non-lethal with some of them. Others he got a little lethal with. So it's like he's not afraid to cross that line, because like I said, in his mind, it's almost like he doesn't really care if it's good or evil. Like, it seems like he's trying to stand for good, but at the same time, it's like, you don't really care, I don't think. I think you're so blinded with rage and hate that you want to take it out against anyone, and you're like, well, the Children of Liberty suck, so let me point all my rage to them. He needs a target for his vendetta. I mean, he already has an issue with Ben Lockwood and the Children of Liberty anyway, so why not? What was also interesting in this episode is Nia's training, because obviously I really liked it because we're seeing them back to like side by side like that, Nia and Brainy, like obviously when they were training but also like fighting, because it's like their powers kind of work in tandem to a certain degree, because it's like her ability to kind of dream and basically kind of be a big precog to a certain extent. I don't know if that would necessarily, I feel like her ability would define itself as kind of precognition, but the fact is, with Brainy's like being able to kind of calculate and now probability and stuff like that or something happening, like it's cool to see them kind of train and just predicting each other's moves and stuff like that, but you also kind of have to be kind of malleable and on the fly with it too. So also, the fact is, Nia's learning more about what she's capable of. One thing is being astral projecting, but it seems like that energy she gathers from astral projecting, like obviously she could use it, to release energy too. Like at first, the reason why I'm guessing, obviously he talks about the whole paradox thing, but the fact is, it's like, about my descendant in the future and stuff like that. Because I didn't even think about that. I forgot, because we are dealing with the year 3000, but it didn't cross my mind to think about that, because it's like, I just figured he knows about Nia, because obviously it's kind of like, because just as much as he knows Supergirl, it's like, oh my god, you're one of these great heroes. But it's like, the fact is that he also doesn't want to tell her anything about like her descendant makes me go, something bad must be associated with, because telling her about her descendant would probably reveal a lot about herself. So maybe it's like we kind of might find out something tragic about Nia's situation or something like that, like how her end comes about or something like that. Maybe like her descendant kind of, maybe like Nia's child ended up being raised alone or something like that, because it kind of like similar to Mari and Kuwasa when it comes to their mom, just because their mom's situation, but that also goes back to Amaya's situation, like how their story kind of plays out like that. Maybe it's kind of a similar situation, and that's what Brittany doesn't want to tell her about. But also just the fear of like, if you know too much about your own future, it might affect your decisions and stuff like that. It's kind of interesting because Calyx, the robot, is kind of saying because of her people, like Nia can actually avoid kind of like paradoxes won't affect them too much, I guess, because of the whole being able to see the future type of thing. So it kind of negates that to a certain extent, but it does seem like there still would be consequences for it. So I'm curious to see what those consequences potentially could be. I also love that Brainy and Calyx don't get along. I guess it's like as a super intelligent being himself, it's just kind of like, oh, it's you. And I was like, oh, have you two run into each other or something like that? I also love that later on when it like Jimmy brings up the fact that he knows about the satellite cars. I'm like, how the hell do you know that? He's like, oh yeah, me and Brainy, we have brunches. And she's like, oh, that's cute. And I'm like, oh, I love that. But there's a lot to digest about this episode too in the regard, because it's interesting because the president, like at first I thought the whole reason why he was freeing Ben Lockwood was just because it's like, I don't want him getting more publicity and stuff like that, which I guess to a certain extent it is, but I think it's also to make him look more favorable himself. President Baker wants to look more favorable to the public people, and it's like, oh, by freeing Ben Lockwood, it's like, oh, he gets a lot of positive. It's like, oh, my people are like, yeah, he's on the human side, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, as time goes on, you go, man, he seems super anti-alien. It seemed like he was kind of positive at the beginning, but now it seems more like, oh, no, I'm anti-alien. But now it's, I don't know. Just the fact is that he's like, oh, you're our director of alien affairs, because it's almost like, I want you to keep aliens in line, but you were willing to use a weapon that would kill aliens that potentially came to this planet, those who would be harmless, and you trying to attack those who would be harmless would just, in all honesty, just put a target on Earth's back, because people are like, oh, Earth is this towards aliens and stuff like that. You might piss off the wrong species of alien that decides to come at Earth, for war or something like that. It might make your situation even worse. Like, they don't think that far ahead, at least in this case, I think. But I'm curious, like, is it just because I can say I just, in my head now, I kind of make it seem like, oh, he's really going down that route. Even to the point Alex, ended up confronting Haley because she did, as the director of the DEO, like alien stuff is supposed to be, our cat, like what we handle, we're supposed to be we're supposed to be the first line of defense for Earth, and I didn't even know about this weapon. Turns out even Haley didn't. So that means the president is making a lot of moves without a lot of people knowing, but it's like, isn't that supposed to be kind of like, that's what, he's not supposed to just kind of be making these decisions on his own. And the fact is that he isn't letting anyone else knows kind of shows he doesn't want anyone else's opinion in this. The fact is he wants to kind of handle this on his own, which is scary because the last thing you want is that person to kind of have all that power of no checks and balances, no one to kind of question what you're up to. The fact is he didn't want anyone questioning it. That's scary in its own. So it's like, didn't expect this like presidency to kind of turn the way it did in the show. Like I don't know. Like I said, at the beginning it seemed like he was kind of chill until he started kind of getting all grumpy and stuff about getting results, and then the way he handled the whole Supergirl thing, it's like, yo, tell me your identity or you're out. And it's like, so I don't know. So that's definitely interesting. And that all ties into Lena's situation because Lena doesn't want to write down any reports and stuff like that. But Alex is like, no, like, how is anyone else going to know about it? She's like, no, I don't want anyone to know about it, especially the government. Because Alex is all about like, oh, we need to protect it. We can't let it get into wrong. He said, oh, you won't have to worry about it because I won't even let it get into government's hand. It seems like she's taking what Jimmy said to a certain degree. It's like she still wants to do this because it's going to help people in general, yes, but she's not being stupid about it. She's like, no, I know the government could weaponize it. So I think it's like she takes her own beliefs and she takes a little bit of what Jimmy said. I mean, to be fair, it was probably already in her mind, but I guess for her, it's like the fact is that Jimmy's so super against it, he wasn't willing to see any wiggle room with it. But to be fair, it's like you don't know. They might take what you did, try and reverse engineer it. I mean, it takes someone super smart, but who's to say they don't get someone to do that? Nevertheless, but when it's all said and done, because of Alex seeing what kind of moves they're making, kind of doing shady stuff like that without everyone knowing, she's kind of like, oh, I support you kind of keeping secretly. But it's like, hey, you need my help in any shape or form. I believe Alex is probably going to be the first person we see kind of normal human getting superpowers. That's what I'm seeing. So, but what's interesting about that too is that Mackenzie brings up the whole, oh, what about stuff again. Now, before Jimmy kind of, shoved it under the rug because it was like, yes, it's because he believed in what Lena was kind of doing and he didn't want her kind of getting caught up in it. But I think at the same time, it's like, also because it's like, that's someone you love. So that's why he kind of did it. I think it's a combination of the two, but I feel like one more so than others. But then talking to Kara, realizing like how Kara made her decision, it's like, I believe, I basically took a step back and realized like, okay, so why am I doing this? And is it for good, or is it just for me, and making sure it's for the right reasons and not for selfish reasons? And that's what protecting Lena in this case would be. It'd be like not looking into this L Corp situation, preventing people from looking into it would be a disservice because, especially what, CATCO stands for. It's all about, telling the truth and stuff like that. And for him to bury that would be going against everything that he and the paper represents. So that's why you kind of see him kind of green light what Mackenzie, it's like, oh, get the person that's, your person to kind of go on record about it and stuff like that. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see that go forward, especially because of the whole Lena situation, which is also going to be interesting too, considering the fact is Lena owns CATCO. That's definitely going to turn into an issue. Let's not forget Jimmy being her ex-boyfriend. That's a lot of complicated layers going forward. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Then, like, you had the whole thing with Ben, I thought was kind of interesting, because Ben kind of felt like he lost his way to a certain extent, the way Cooper was telling himself. I also love the fact is he freaked out when he found out Manchester had escaped, because, I think it's also because it's like, well, Manchester would have came after his family before, so there's that aspect to it, too. But Manchester's not coming after Ben until later on. Like, he's still a target, but he's got bigger things at play here. But for Ben, it's like he turned over his mask for a suit and tie, essentially, and he's rubbing elbows with the big wigs, and he kind of feels like it doesn't matter. Like, he used to be down in the trenches with everyone else fighting for his beliefs, and now he's just kind of like, I'm kicking it with politicians who really don't care, who aren't as invested in the situation as I am. Like I said, he got elected to the director of alien affairs and stuff like that. which is a scary position for him to be in and stuff like that. Like, I mean, for people and aliens in general, for him to have that position is a great position for him. But it kind of shows you how brutal he is, because he went back to grabbing that mask and bashing that dude Cooper's head in and being like, oh, is there anyone else going to challenge my authority? Because for him, it's like, I think for such a long, it's like, oh, we can all be, liberty. But I think for him, it's like, no, I don't want, no one's going to question, this is my, what is the word I'm looking for? Crusade. And no one else is going to take this from me. This is my fight. So that's where my mind is about it. But I just thought it was kind of interesting, because I guess now that was him kind of getting his footing back of like, I haven't forgotten where I came from, what I fight for, what this mask represent. Like, this mask doesn't just represent this movement. It represents me and all that I've lost and what I'm fighting for, all of humanity. So it's definitely interesting to see, like, obviously him going for it, obviously having the position he does. It's also going to be interesting, too, because, like, obviously he's been unmasked and everything, and we'll probably see him go a lot more unmasked and stuff like that. So, like I said, I'm interested to see where that all ends up playing out. I'm so interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Walking Dead. So let's break this episode down. A lot of interesting things went down. Obviously, we had the whole Alpha talking to Lydia. Lydia tried to give away as little information as possible, being like, oh yeah, these people, they aren't well armed at all. In fact, these are just farmers, this and that. Just because she didn't want to give too much away. Because now, like, Lydia from before, sure, would have, without hesitation, would have told her mom everything. But now remembering who her mom really is and having got to know Henry and kind of care about him like that, she didn't tell anything. And then, even Alpha being like, oh, the fact of the matter is I saved you for nothing. And then Lydia's like, is that the only reason why you saved me? Because for information? And then her mom was like, that's a stupid question. Which, let's be fair, you still didn't answer it. Because once again, in her own sick, twisted way, she actually believes what she's doing is best for Lydia. It's like, oh, like the way I treat you and stuff like that, that's love. I'm keeping you strong and survive. Because she even told that story later on of like, oh, when Lydia got wrapped up in plastic, and it's like, oh man, you're like, there's part of me that's like, oh man, this is a heartwarming story. Maybe it's tugging at her humanity. And then she immediately was like, oh, I asked if she was okay. She nodded her head. And then I hit her hard and told her to be a reminder of never letting it happen again. And I'm like, geez, that took a hard left turn in that regard. So that's the point, like, because in her mind, everything she does is about, she's willing to do whatever it takes to protect what she loves. In this case, it's Lydia. It's just a very twisted form of love. Because it doesn't seem like that's just like a more recent thing. It seems like that's the case in all regards. Because for her, it's like the only way you're going to learn is if you get hurt. The fact of the matter is that pain's going to remind you to never do this stupid thing again. It's kind of like the whole concept of like, oh, like if a kid burns their hand on a stove, they know never to touch it again. I'm not trying to excuse her actions, but I'm saying in her own twisted mind, those two situations are the exact same in her mind. And it's like, jeez, it shows you how messed up she is. Once again, this is further proof of like, oh, it's not like this world messed her up. It seems like she was just as messed up from the very beginning. So there's that. But we kind of got a little bit more of insight into how the whole operation worked. We got to actually see where their home is. Even the fact that it actually kind of looks a little depressing. They're all like, and not everyone is, but a lot of them are walking around with their, walker skins on. But they're just kind of out in the woods, set up. It's like a very makeshift camp and stuff like that in the woods. I mean, to be fair, they're kind of like nomads. I mean, it's interesting because they consider that home, but it's really just a spot in the woods. Is kind of interesting, but they are more like nomads. But I guess it's like, as long as we have this one spot. I think Lydia had talked about the fact is that they do kind of move around, don't they? So, but regardless, the fact of the matter is, one dude stepped to Alpha, and it's kind of interesting because it's like, oh, she goes by Alpha because that's her position. Because I didn't think about it at the time, but it's like, yeah, because it's the thing of like anyone who takes control of the group is known as Alpha. It's not like that's her actual name. It's kind of like they're like a pack of wolves. Like they follow their leader. They're Alpha, and anyone who takes that position can be Alpha. And it's like you don't have to, it's like you can challenge her at any time. And what was really interesting is like, oh, this dude stepped to me, but it's like, no, I saw you whispering with him. This is all your plan. So if you want to take a shot, you take a shot. But basically, she was the lady that was challenging her, or not really outright challenging her. It's like, you put us all in danger, because the whole fact is like, we got one thing in return. We got Henry, but we let go of theirs. They've killed a lot of ours. It's like, that's not really fair. So they think she's not doing a good job at this whole leadership thing, because it's like, oh, you got your daughter back, and it's just like, that doesn't really equate. And it's like, oh, like the fact is you aren't doing what's best for us, you know. You put us all in danger type of thing. But then Alpha's like, oh, but no one else here is backing you up because I make them strong. I'm the reason why they're alive, so they will stay by me. And it's just kind of like, okay, I don't want to challenge you. And she's like, too late. Literally decapitates her with wire or something. And it's like, Jesus. And then what does she do? Takes the woman's head and puts it in her boyfriend's hands. And it's like, no more no tears. That's for the weak. And then stabs and kill him. I'm like, if he didn't cry, would she have let him live? I think she just probably was looking for an excuse to kill him. Was probably just saying like, oh no, tears make you weak. You probably want to look strong at your end. Potentially that could have that could be interpreted either way. But man, that group does not BS around. And it's like, geez, and Henry witnesses it firsthand. For him, it's like, that's why when the time comes later on, he's like, I'm not leaving you here, Lydia. Literally, this crazy-ass place, no way. The fact of the matter is, it's like, especially seeing who her mom is. Her mom even being like, okay, so I need you to kill that boy. And because it's like, oh, you were there long enough for it to, you know, make you question your loyalties. Because the fact is she didn't want to kill Henry because it's like, no, I can't do that. And it just shows you how much she cares about him. I'm surprised she didn't outright confront her mom, because her mom's like, oh, you remember what happened to your dad? She's like, yes, Mom, I remember what happened to Dad. And it's like, Alpha doesn't know that she knows, but, you know, because she tried to tell, you know, Lydia earlier, it's like, oh, words are just words. The fact is you had to lie, and they lied. And just at the end of the day, words are words, and you shouldn't be so caught up in them, essentially, and stuff like that. Believe everything that they say, and believe everything they represent, and stuff like that. It's like, jeez, dude. Place is hardcore, because the dude was suggesting that Alpha kind of nipped this in the bud because it's like the way to get Lydia back on her side, because it's like he could tell that Lydia was kind of developing feelings. What I also thought was kind of interesting is when Alpha was cleaning up blood, she was like, it's been a long time, I guess, since anyone challenged her, and she's like, it felt different this time. I'm like, I'm wondering why. Is it because she herself, like, is it because she actually does feel like, hey, the fact of the matter is that other people kind of probably do agree with what they were kind of going for, the two that are dead now? Or, like, what? Did she actually feel a little remorse about killing them? Maybe it wasn't like, oh, it wasn't as easy this time, or something like that. I thought she was kind of representing, meaning like, oh, it's just a little bit of a different thing. Like maybe there was a little something to their whole aspect of them being like, oh, the way you're leading isn't right, or something like that. I don't know. It's hard to say what she necessarily meant by that. But what I think is really interesting, and it kind of fits with the whole aspect of the episode, is the fact is that Lydia coming back with them is going to be a big issue, because when it's all said and done, like, they've kind of avoided, you know, I mean, they had their run-ins with the, you know, Whisperers, but the fact of the matter is they probably would have had issues with them to begin with anyway, because it's like, the fact of the matter is you killed people that were important to us, in this case Jesus, so, you know, and you try to take two of our people, so it's like, no, we haven't forgiven that, but they were probably just going to let things be. But the fact of the matter is that group out there is still a threat anyway. So, but the fact is, this brings it all back to their doorstep, because they have Lydia, and, you know, Alpha's going to be pissed about that. You know, some of their people died in that excursion too. So it's like, Alpha's got to step up, or other people might get pissed off at her and stuff like that. I'm curious, when it's all said and done, are we going to have a situation of Lydia challenging her mom for leadership of the group or something like that? I don't know. And the reason why I think it's kind of interesting that kind of ties in together is just because everything that goes down with Michonne in this episode, like the whole thing of like the council being split, because like Michonne at the end of the day has like the veto power and stuff like that. But for her, it's like, we can't take these risks of kind of joining out there. You know, we can't be all, you know, connected like we used to be, just because of everything that went down in those 6 years. But the fact of the matter is, we open those doors, we welcome in everything that's out there, which Aaron, after losing Jesus like that, goes like, yeah, I 100% agree with Michonne. I wouldn't take back that Thomas spent with Jesus, but the fact of the matter is, the things she warned us about the threats outside are literally at our doorstep with those whisperers chilling with the walkers and stuff like that. It's like a new threat has appeared like she said it would be. So you can make the argument her paranoia, I mean, just because your paranoia turns out to be correct doesn't mean you're not being paranoid, you know? So that's the interesting thing about that. But the whole thing of like, oh, like, you know, the fact is we shouldn't be too afraid to get involved in stuff like that. And ultimately, Aaron and Michonne, like, I'm going to circle back to it. We're kind of like, oh, I hope nothing goes wrong. You know, I hope we don't come to regret this. It kind of will, because Hilltop's going to get dragged into this. The Kingdom's going to get dragged into this because, like I brought up last episode, I believe the Kingdom walked into their territory. So there's that. Or at least potentially a territory that might belong to theirs. Maybe it might not. Maybe that's a completely different group. I don't know. But the fact is, like, you know, Henry bringing this to Hilltop's doorstep is going to get other people involved, because it's like, you know, the moment they find out about Alexandria or the Kingdom, like, that's when shit's going to go crazy for everyone, essentially, you know? But kind of getting to it, it's like, you know, you understand Michonne's point of view, and, you know, because even Sadiq is like, dude, I get it. You're trying to protect people and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, what about the Kingdom? Because if we don't do anything, the Kingdom will fall. Because the thing is, it's like, Carol was literally so desperate, she's come to us and asked a second time. The Kingdom, if they were so sufficient in handling stuff by themselves, Carol would never have done that. You know, Carol's a very, you know, I think Carol probably would be very reluctant and ask for help. You know, I mean, I think the Kingdom in general would be like that. But I think it's like, Michonne was kind of saying, like, but, you know, Ezekiel doesn't want to give up the Kingdom. Now, I ultimately interpret that as like, oh, he doesn't want to leave the Kingdom behind because that's been his home for so long. Another way I feel like you could interpret it, but I think it's less likely, is the whole aspect of like, oh no, like, they'd have to give up, you know, everything they know as a kingdom, and give up who they are as a kingdom, and just become one with Alexandria. I highly doubt that, but that was just kind of one way my mind interpreted it. But I think it's simply like, they don't want to leave their home behind, because that's the home where so much has happened. That's where their lives are. That's, once again, their home, and it would mean abandoning it. But for Michonne, it's too much of a risk because the roads are too, the routes are too broken. The fact of the matter is, with this new threat out there, it's too dangerous to kind of be trading, because those trade roads would leave you open to attacks and stuff like that. So there's that. And it all kind of puts Michonne in a very, it's a hard position, because on top of that, there's the whole Negan thing, which Negan's like, oh no, I've changed. She's like, changed? Dude, the only reason why you came back here is because you thought you'd go back out there, but the world spit you back and you came crawling back. That's all it is to it. And he's like, yes, it is. The fact of the matter is, he's like, but I'm here to help you as one leader to a former leader. I can help you rein this place back in. You know, it's like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I hear from my window of all this stuff that's, you know, people say, like, people are kind of losing faith. It's like, you got a good thing going here, but if you're not careful, it's all going to slip through your fingertips. Michonne's just not willing to listen. And it's like, understandably, it's like, it's coming from Negan's mouth. After all the damage he's caused, why would you listen to him? Why? After everything you've lost, the people you've lost just because of him and all his BS, it's like, why would you? So obviously, you know, you'd have a lot of resentment towards Negan and not willing to listen to it. What I thought was really interesting is that she caught Judith spying nearby, and even Negan was like, shit. Because that is the one person he had to talk to, and now that that's done, it's like, yep, you have no one to talk to now, because Michonne's going to keep you basically 100% in solitude. But it was kind of interesting, because like, Judith brought up a lot of stuff up being like, oh no, I wasn't spying on you. I was actually talking to Negan. I was actually surprised. I was like, wow, you were brave enough to actually tell the truth. She was a little scared because she's a little girl, but still at the same time, she was like upfront. It's like, no, I like talking to him because he listens to me. No one else does, you know? But it's like, all the stuff that he does, he's a monster. She's like, no, he's not a monster. He's a human being. But the fact is, it's like, you were too young to know all that we lost because of him. All the people he hurt and took from people that were, you know, important to me and to your dad. That, you know, the fact is, if he goes back out there, he's, you know, the fear is, if he gets let out, he's going to start that all over again. We kind of be at war and stuff like that. But Judith was basically like, but the fact is, he didn't. The fact is, he was out there, but he didn't. He came back. But, you know, I'm sure, you know, Michonne's mind is kind of like, yeah, he didn't, because things weren't there and the saviors weren't there for him to rile them up. If he had the opportunity, if things were like they were before, he would have. But the fact is that things are different. Of course he wasn't, because he didn't have the opportunity to. But given the opportunity, it's all going to happen. It's hard to say. the fact is Negan is opening up to, Judith like that and stuff. I think he has changed. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what Michonne does in that route, but I don't see her anytime soon siding with him, but it's going to be interesting because they are tiptoeing towards it. They are setting that up to be like, maybe there's going to be something there. We'll ultimately have to wait and see, though, but like I said, it's so interesting because Michonne went to Aaron because, it's like, I'm going to tell you first, like, I don't agree with this whole situation, but they want to do this whole fair situation, then I'm going to let them. The fact is, like, I don't agree with it, but the fact of the matter is the charter I made was for the purpose of letting people kind of decide for themselves. Like, because obviously she's kind of monopolized the power in everything because it's like, yeah, the council decides on stuff, but because she ultimately has the power to veto, it kind of turns it from more of a democracy into more of a dictatorship in a certain regard. So... but it seems like she's kind of letting that slide a little bit. Obviously, it doesn't sit well with her because, like I said, she's paranoid. Once again, I'm at this point, I'm like, we may never find out what happened in those 6 years. It might be something that we might not find out till the very end of this season. It might be something we don't even find out till potentially season 10, like the next season, So, I don't know. Maybe that is the case. Maybe it isn't. We'd ultimately have to wait and see in that regard. But, like, it's probably just something like, oh, some terrible shit went down. We're just kind of leaving it at that. But I feel like there's going to be more to it. Like I said, I'm sure it just depends on a lot of stuff that I really won't get into because it would lead to large tangents and stuff like that. But nevertheless, there was also another interesting storyline in this episode. I won't lie to you. I completely missed the fact is that Rosie was telling Siddiq, oh, I'm pregnant. I was like, I think I was so caught up in the whole, like, oh, you were a thing and stuff like that. Completely missed the whole fact is that she was pregnant and that Eugene overheard it. But it's like, oh, she ended up telling Gabriel the truth. And she's like, hey, I get it. You didn't sign up for this situation. The fact of the matter is, like that we'd end up where we are. So the fact of the matter is, if you want to leave, you can leave. But Rosita's like, you know where I stand with all of this. And it's like, geez. And I love that Eugene was kind of like, okay, here's some charts to be like, okay, the pros and cons to this whole situation. He even layered it out like years, and the fact of the matter is the effects it would have on your happiness and stuff like that. Taking care of another man's baby in this situation. But Eugene laid it out straight fact, be like, yo, fact of the matter is you be an idiot to let Rosita go because she's the best thing that's happened to you with all of when everything kind of went to shit. And the fact of the matter is, no matter what happens with Siddiq, even if this is Siddiq's baby, the fact of the matter is she loves you and you obviously love her. Don't waste time because that's all, love and time. And it's like, that's all we have. Like, both of those things. So cherish them while you have them. The fact of the matter is, and he's like, this is coming from someone who is madly in love with her, but she doesn't feel the same way. And it's like, oh, Eugene! And trying to, him doing that was kind of very sweet and kind of setting gear. Because it's like, yeah, we don't know what the future holds and stuff like that, I should also note this, it's just kind of a little tangent thing. I'm blanking on the music video. I recently saw the actress who plays Rosita in the music video. I was like, hey, because she's in the thumbnail for it and stuff like that. The song is called Drew Barrymore. I'm blanking on the artist. I'm blinking on his name so hard, but I was like, oh, that's so cool. She's like a main part of the music video. Like, she's in a cool, like, I think she's in the entire music video, which is like, I kind of lost my shit. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And once again, I always feel weird and funny just because, like, I've brought this up before in these recordings. I think I have. But the fact is, because, the thing I know the actress who plays Rosita kind of best know her for, and what I first knew her about her before, she popped up in, what was that, season 4 was the first time her, Eugene, and Abraham showed up, I think. The fact is that I always associate her with Susie Crabgrass from Nancy Classified School Survivor Guide, just because that's the first thing I ever saw her in. So sometimes like that still kind of bounces in my head a little bit. I think, oh, Rosita, but I also think of Susie Crabgrass, just the way my mindset is. So I think it's also just because it's like I grew up with that show, because I was like roughly around the same age when that show was originally airing. I think so. Nevertheless. Also, really quickly, I almost let that slip my mind. I love that moment Daryl had in the woods where he, like, shot the arrow and the dog went to get it. I was like, is that a thing? Does that happen all the time? And the dog brings it to him, but the arrow breaks, and he's like, bad dog. I'm like, what? That's crazy. But I was like, does the dog actually bring you your arrows back each time? That's nuts, dude. That's super cool. I love that that's his thing. It's like, yo, Daryl and the dog. That's awesome. I wonder, is that a comic book thing or not? It's actually kind of sad just because it also kind of makes you think of Ezekiel, and wasn't his tiger named Shiva? It just makes you think of that, and it's like, brings back the memories and breaks your heart. Like, I was watching something, and I'm blanking on something I was watching today referenced Ezekiel and Shiva, and it kind of reminded me of that too. So that's another reason why it was kind of in my head right now, today anyway, but nevertheless. But obviously the fair is going down because they're going to, well, obviously Alexandria is getting ready for the trades and stuff like that. But I'm so interested to see where things go down because, you know, like I said, the Whisperers are not going to be happy. It's also interesting too because, like I said, it plays into who they are and stuff like that. But for them to be whispering, even like in disagreements like that and stuff like that, it's so interesting. I mean, but to be fair, that's like how they naturally talk now because they've been doing it for so many years. They've adjusted to it. You know, once again, it's like they believe this is like some natural order that they're blending in with. It's like the dead rule the world. We're just finding our little space in it and blending in, essentially. So, nevertheless, it's going to be interesting when everything, you know, because we are nearing the end of the season. This is like episode, 12? So we only got like 4 or 5 more episodes. 4 more episodes this season, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see, you know, what's going down for the rest of the season, but also just what's in store for us in the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.